Hi, I'm Esme and welcome to Behind the Brush, our series where we explore the Cambridge art world. Cambridge is best known for its literature and science. However, we have discovered an emerging art scene, so this week we're going to be looking at sculpture. We want to know the challenges that sculptors face, how they collaborate with each other, and the interaction between them and the wider community. We're going to be talking to artists Mel Fraser and Harry Gray, gallery owners and members of the public themselves. What does it really mean to be a sculptor in Cambridge?
The impression is that stone is really hard and tough. In fact, it's very fragile and requires sensitive movement of handling. Well, I work both figurative and abstract. These are sort of quite good examples of the abstract work, but I also work pieces to balance. So without any pins, they're just pure balance pieces. People came and they didn't quite realise what they were initially in the idea that they were looking around for someone, and I was just in the shadows watching, and they desperately wanted to touch, so they were looking sort of behind themselves, and then suddenly sort of wanted to feel the piece, felt the piece, and it moved, and they suddenly jumped back and then realised, then looked around again to see if anybody was about, and then started just playing with them and sort of spinning them round. And for me, that was just brilliant. They were just totally, utterly engaged, one with the sort of the amusement of the piece, but also just the purity, the slightest of touch, and the piece would rotate very delicately. Sometimes I will use humour, and I have a few naughty pieces around that can shock people. I think there's quite an appreciation within Cambridge. I open up my studio in the summer for open studios in July. In a gallery situation, in a museum, it's hands off. You're not allowed to touch it. And so many times I get asked, are we allowed to touch? And that's really exciting to allow that sort of educational sort of process with sculpture and art, really.
Mel has proved that public engagement is really important for an artist, and something else that could affect a sculptor's work is the space allocated for it, and that they have to make it in. Harry Gray is going to tell us more about the joys and struggles experienced by artists in Cambridge.
The materials I like to work with have changed a lot. Originally, I really liked stone. At art school, I sort of fell for it and trained here in Cambridge as a stone carver. Community input is pretty important. You're making a public piece of work for a place that's of shared usage. For instance, the University Library books. There's a monstrous tower there that is the great statement for the University Library. So there was no way I was going to make a tall vertical sculpture because it would be dwarfed. Instead, I had to make something that would be respectful of the space and the existing structure. The colours of the bronze relate to the colours of the brickwork. It had to be respectful. My work had to work with the building, not against it. Although clearly, it can work brilliantly the other way around. Twickenham asked me to make a piece of artwork that would acknowledge the First World War team. So I've tried to make a transition from roses, and their form gradually changes through a series of different centres until they become poppies. So I was concerned that above that I had to find something else that was more serious and more war related rather than something that I've made. I thought about barbed wire because there was obvious symbolism with the trenches. And then I had an idea that I wondered if I could get hold of real fired German shells. And from the firing pins, I used the poppy emblem that we know from Remembrance Day. To find a good space to work in Cambridge is very, very difficult. The land values are such that you don't get access to empty warehouses or empty studios, offices very easily. I'm very fortunate here. I have a lot of space. The council are my landlord, they're very supportive. Having a lot of space helps me think because it means around here I've got objects that I've made or collected and I see them every day. They're an extension of my thinking process. I don't know how I would be able to make things if I had a laptop and a small bedroom to design in. I like to have things around me that trigger ideas. So I expect that will change the way work is made in Cambridge by artists to some degree. And I'm very pleased that I have the space to think in a different way.
Facing King's College Chapel on King's Parade is an art gallery called Bayard Art. We went to find out how popular sculpture is and to see how cost effective it is due to the space needed to display.
We're very lucky in that we can show a mixture of things. We can show two-dimensional work on the walls, both upstairs and downstairs. We've got enough space for sculpture, for prints, and also we've got jewellery cabinets, so we have handmade jewellery and ceramics and craft work as well. So really everything contemporary in all media. Sculpture is always a difficult one because sculptors like to produce things on a grand scale, and obviously one can't display enormous pieces of work, but also a lot of things are for outdoors, and again we can't really display and do justice to outdoor pieces. It's very much more easy to sell two-dimensional work than it is three-dimensional work because everybody has walls and knows how to put things on walls. They're not quite so confident about how to place sculpture in their own home. It is cost effective, and we're having a sculpture show which is solely sculpture later on this year because we like sculpture. We want to encourage it because it's interesting and it's nice for people to have a mixture of things. It's just that people are more reluctant to buy it.
In Cambridge, there are obviously specific problems faced by sculptors, so perhaps there is even more need for a strong artist community. Source is a workshop here at the Fitzwilliam run by professional artists in order to help young students with their art exams. Today, the artist is Susie Altjack, and we want to find out her opinions on the sculpting and wider community in Cambridge.
I like to think that young people are interested in sculpture. I think in schools the emphasis is often in on painting and drawing. They come here and we show them sculpture and we show them the materials that they can use at the moment, so things like wire and wood.
I mean, fundamentally, we want people of all ages, including, and I suppose particularly, children and young people who live in the city and across the region and beyond, to be able to connect with the kind of cultural riches of their area, and we very much believe the Fitzwilliam and the amazing collections we hold have the potential to be a wonderful resource for learning and for creativity and imagination.
It's just fantastic to be in a space with real professional artists, as opposed to a teacher, just your fellow students who are doing their job. It feels like the people here have a real passion, and they want to share that passion with you, and it's great. It excites you. It's not just work. Our class, I guess our school prefers us to work within our books almost completely, and just as a matter of convenience, it's harder to, let's say, make a sculpture, take pictures of the sculpture, print it out, include it in the book, and do analysis when you could just draw or paint.
Public art in general allow people to experience art that might not necessarily want to or have had time to step into a gallery. And so as you're walking on the street, you might come across something and just be kind of blown away by how great it is. As people are still using traditional materials, so they're still carving stone or welding or using glass, but at the same time we're starting to 3D print sculptures or project digital images through or onto sculpture, or have sensor activated elements to work. So it's this really interesting point where basically the idea of what sculpture can be is expanding.
It seems like conventional forms of art, such as painting and drawing, dominate artistic creativity in our education system. Though sculpture is quite difficult to access, the lack of guidance within this art form is encouraging more experimentation with technology. As 2D art becomes more digital, sculpture is just starting to evolve, and though it may not be as popular as more domestically appropriate art forms due to the space needed, sculpture is everywhere and can be more engaging with the right creative spark. I'm Esme Kovacs, and join us next time for Behind the Brush.